we'll get going in just 1 minute. As soon as someone runs an errand for me, we'll be set. Hey, Marie, can you ask Carl to come on down? Yeah, anything electrical, I would never have been an E because here's wiring with a wire with a orange or green strip. I can't tell the difference. So yeah, of course I'm color coding all the stuff. I'm like, what colors are these? But it's amazing how your brain learns to adapt.
It's red green. Red green is the color.
I have problems with reds and oranges, blues and purples, greens and browns. Sometimes the oranges throw me off. Purples, I hate purple because I don't know what purple looks like. So, my brother went to a science museum with his son. He's also colorblind, and they had this is what the world looks like, and this is what a colorblind person sees. And his son goes, "Oh, Dad, you live in a sad world." So, I don't know what I'm missing. So, and I know they have those glasses you can put on, and if I do that, I probably would find out then what the world really looks like, or closer to it. So, yeah, I just go for traffic lights, reds on top, greens on the bottom. So you learn to adapt. The only thing I don't like, well, even blinking red lights have a stop sign, so I know that. Blinking yellow lights don't. So that's the only thing that really drives me a little. Thank you. All right, we'll get going. I can do this, advance the slides. Okay. All right, I have 8:34. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jim Spishiger. I'm the chair of the Inspection Division. I'd like to welcome you all to Memphis. Thank you for being here. Oh, it's working automatically. Just so you know, any session in this room will be streamed live on a live webcast, and it's also being recorded. So we're going to ask if you ever have a question and you're in this room to use a microphone so it can get recorded on the recording, and people out in the world can hear us. I know there's people from Africa online, Ghana, Nigeria have registered in advance for this, as well as US and Canada. So this is an international conference, so thank you for being here, and welcome to the world. All right, so thank you. I just always want to start with a thank you. We appreciate your business. We appreciate you being here. We'll wish you the best of success at this conference. I know you have a lot of choices in different conference and educational opportunities, so it's really a great pleasure having you here. And 15 months worth of work went into this, and hopefully you'll bear the fruits of our efforts in a positive way. I want to start with a thank you for our sponsors and exhibitors. And I didn't test these slides, obviously, but we couldn't make this conference possible without all our conference exhibitors and sponsors. There's quite a bit. You can see here, we have a total of 19 different exhibitors on presence on site, and there was also another dozen sponsors supporting us. So a big thank you to them. We're going to ask that you please visit their booth. So let's go through a few of the housekeeping items. Since I was talking about the exhibitors, we'll start with number one, or the last one. We have a fishbowl here, and each of the exhibitors has tickets. Everybody's given a ticket in the back of your badge. There should be a raffle ticket. Tomorrow afternoon, during a break, we'll raffle off door prizes. We have about 2 dozen. The exhibitors have extra tickets, so if you go to visit them at their exhibit booth, they will give you another ticket to add. So theoretically, somebody can win all the prizes. So please stop by and visit them. I mentioned the live stream. Breaks will be right up here. Hopefully you found breakfast this morning. Tours. Carl, where are you? Carl, please stand up. Carl's our tour guide. If you have a if you have a star on your badge, those are your tour admission tickets. So the red is going first thing this morning.
Don't have the star on there if you don't get on.
There was advanced registration. There is a fee we have to pay for a lot of these different tours. The bus is limited in size, so yeah, it's tough to sneak on. So Carl's the man. He can work with you. So the red tour is first, blue tour is this afternoon. The green's the first one tomorrow, and the gold one will be your tour tomorrow afternoon.
And just a short note, if you get there 5, maybe 10 minutes beforehand, we're on a tight schedule. So we get the bus loaded, check everybody off, and then we get moving, and we're on schedule for our host. So I appreciate your help with that one.
And we're meeting on the veranda right in the front door. So
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
you're welcome. Bernie, thank you for coming. Come on down. Yes. I'm putting you to work. This is not a recognition thing. So Bernie has parking tickets, passes. So if you parked in the lot next door and you want to get it for free, see Bernie. So.
Oh, sure.
Bernie's our arrangement coordinator. If you need anything, contact him. And again, if you don't want to pay for your parking, see him. He'll give you a ticket. So there's also free Wi-Fi. So hopefully you don't want any problems logging in through the guest network here at the conference center. I have these round dots. Those are for the workshops. So the first workshop is the pink one. That's sampling this morning. The yellow one is for inspection. Advanced registration was required for these also. The instructors had to prep materials, so there's not a lot of leeway and extra people, but you can try to get in if you want to. None of them sold out, so there should be some room. But that's what those dots mean on your name badge. Lastly, you're all invited to our reception this evening over in the Holiday Inn. It's from 6 to 7:30. We'll have appetizers and free drinks. Great chance to network. If you're here by yourself, come meet some people, go out to dinner afterwards. This promises to be a good time. So again, it's in the Wilson Gallery next door at the Holiday Inn. It's on the second floor, yes. Okay. With that, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker. So I did a little research on Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence. I can't begin to explain all that they do. So you do own Brown & Sharp. So they do micrometers and calipers, but they go into much more advanced inspection, test equipment, manufacturing. They're really a manufacturing solution provider. So that's what they do. Zach is the Director of Engineering and R&D, and he's here to support our theme of quality as a bridge to the future. So I'd like to introduce Zach and let him take on the next hour and introduce to his world in manufacturing and R&D. So thank you, Zach.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me come and speak with everybody today. I want to start with, that went the wrong direction. I want to start with a bit of a quote. To improve is to change. So to be perfect is to have changed often. And I think that's particularly relevant for the speech today and what I'll be talking about, because change is improvement. Let me start by telling you a little bit about me and Hexagon. I've always been interested in technology as a kid. I took apart alarm clocks and radios, tape recorders when those existed, trying to figure out either how they worked or trying to fix them. Sometimes I made it better, sometimes I made it worse. I decided I was going to get my engineering degree at Worcester Polytechnic Institute in Massachusetts. I have a degree in electrical engineering. And after having graduated there, I went to Eastern Acoustic Works to design loudspeakers. It was pretty much a dream job. I got to design loudspeakers, listen to music, and be paid for it. Not bad. I quickly realized that I enjoyed working with the people as much as the technology. And so I got into engineering management, a company that we had acquired in Italy. I went over there for a couple of years to run their engineering team and try and help integrate that engineering team with the engineering team in the US. After a couple of years there, I returned back to Loud Technologies, same company. We've gone through a number of name changes at this point. And I ran the engineering team there for loudspeaker design for a number of years. After 5 or 6 years of doing that, I decided it was time to grow up and get a real job. I wanted to actually learn more about other technologies, kind of broaden my horizons, and so I went to Hexagon. I've been at Hexagon now 10 years. I left a dream job to come to Hexagon, not knowing what that was going to bring. But I can truly say that I've gone there, and I never really looked back. Hexagon's got great technology, we have great people, we have a great organization, and I really, really, truly enjoy it. Hexagon started in 1833 as Brown & Sharp. Many people know Brown & Sharp, an old manufacturing company. They made machine tools for industry and did that for many, many years. In the 1980s and 1990s, they started to get into inspection technology. They acquired a company called Dia out of Italy and Tesa in Switzerland. We concentrated on metrology equipment. And when Hexagon acquired the assets of Brown & Sharp in 2000, they focused the team strictly on metrology. And so we began to narrow the focus and build the biggest metrology company in the world. Over the last 10 years, we've evolved, and we've evolved beyond just metrology and inspection. We've evolved with softwares that span the entire manufacturing life cycle. We've added to our portfolio things like Spatial Analyzer, Vero, which is a CAD/CAM software package, QDOS, which is Statistical Process Control, MSC, which creates design simulation software. We do this all in order to kind of connect all the dots around the entire manufacturing lifecycle process. We want to take the outputs of one process and put them into the previous process to close the loop, perhaps even earlier. So you can imagine taking the output of an inspection routine and feeding it into the input of a machine tool. You might even feed that back into design simulation. The concept is really to get to the point of a connected factory and smart factories where all of these processes are connected, where we can automate a lot more than we do today. That's where Hexagon's heading. What I hope today to provide to you is some concrete strategies on how you can improve your capabilities inside of your organization. I don't intend to use a lot of corporate jargon and buzzwords. I'll mention a couple of them, but I'm an engineer. And at heart, what that means is that I'll take a big problem and try and break it down into small, digestible chunks, something we can do something with. I'll present a couple of ideas that have worked for us and some things that have failed. And I hope to leave you with a couple of ideas to take back to your organizations to improve things. This is a CMM. It was a CMM produced by Dia in 1991. I put that up there because I wanted to contrast that. Whoa. I don't know if I can get back that far. There we go. One click. I wanted to contrast that with the CMM that we produce today. They're more or less equivalent on the surface. From an architecture standpoint, they're more or less the same. I don't mean to suggest for a minute that these two are equivalent products. The CMM of today is far superior in every way than the one we made almost 30 years ago. Materials have changed, geometries have changed, sensors have changed, control technology, drive systems, modeling. All that has made a product that's faster, more accurate, a much, much better product. But architecturally, they're very similar. Hold that thought for a moment. I want to talk a little bit about the workforce and how the workforce is changing, because I think that this plays into where we need to go. 35% of the world is now 35 years old or younger. The millennials now make up the largest part of our workforce. A couple of years ago, they surpassed the Gen Xers, my generation, to become the largest part of the workforce. So you ask yourself, why is that important? Well, it's important because this generation has grown up with technology, and they've grown up with technology that's instantly accessible. Manufacturing technology, the hardware technology specifically, as you saw from the previous slides, is slowed. The rate of change, it's still improving, but the rate of change is slow. If you contrast that now with what's going on in the consumer world, it's drastically different. In 2007, the iPhone was introduced. That was 11 years ago. And in 11 years, we've automated massive parts of our lives. The millennials have grown up with all of this technology. It's what all of us have now become accustomed to. Gone are the days where you grabbed a map and tried to plan out a route. You don't even grab a GPS anymore. You grab your phone, you might ask it where you're going, you might click on something. It'll route your directions, it'll give you an ETA. It'll share that ETA with somebody that you're going to meet. And if there's traffic on the way, it'll reroute you to try and keep you on schedule. And all that happens automatically. This level of automation is what we need to be able to put into our work lives, into our factories. Connectivity and access of information is also staggering. Take a look at how much information is at your fingertips on your phone or on your device. It's impressive. My kids are 10 and 11. I asked my son the other day, have you ever even heard of an encyclopedia? And he said, well, that's kind of like an atlas, isn't it? And I said, well, sort of, yeah. It's not about maps necessarily, but it's about information. I realized, actually, that the volumes of encyclopedias that I grew up with on my shelf as a kid, you can't even get anymore. Encyclopedia Britannica went out of print in 2012. You can still get a subscription, but of course it's all available online. And that information is easily drillable. You can just click through it. No longer do you have to go through different volumes and try and find the information. Opportunities are everywhere for us to be able to improve things in manufacturing. And manufacturing software is what's going to bring us there. It's not going to be the hardware. But what it requires us to do is it requires us to change, and it requires our organizations to change. Let's take a look at a couple of organizations that have changed. NUMMI. Likely, if you like cars and you're in manufacturing, you may have heard of NUMMI. NUMMI was the new United Motor Manufacturing Company. It was a joint partnership between Toyota and GM, competitors, two likely candidates not set up for partnerships, but both had something that the other wanted. Toyota was looking to get into manufacturing automobiles in the US and increase their market share. GM was doing that, but GM wasn't doing it particularly well. GM had quality problems. Toyota was known for producing excellent quality vehicles, so they formed this partnership. GM had a plant in Fremont, California. And inside of GM, it was known for having particularly bad quality. And GM's not known for having good quality, so it had to be pretty bad. They had problems with drugs, alcohol, the relationship with the unions. The quality was horrendous. What would happen is if there was a problem on the line, they wouldn't stop the line, they'd send the problem down the line. Parts installed wrong, broken, missing, and ultimately fix it at the end. They park them out in the lot and fix them. When they opened NUMMI, which was the same plant where the GM plant had existed, when they opened it, they hired a lot of the same workers that the GM Fremont plant had, contending that it wasn't necessarily the workers, it was the environment, it was the culture of the organization that allowed that to happen. The first thing that they did is they took those workers, those GM workers, and they brought them to Japan. And in Japan, they worked side by side with their counterparts on the line. What the GM workers saw was something starkly different from what they saw in their own factory. And that was that a Toyota worker could pull a line and stop the production line for a quality problem. That wasn't a culture at all at GM. Send it down the line. They'll fix it later. When they pulled the line, a team of people would come over, fix the problem, look at what was causing it, see if they could root cause analysis, and make it so that it didn't happen again. That was the culture of Toyota. 2 years after they opened that, at NUMMI they were successfully manufacturing with high quality Toyota cars and GM cars. And they did that for a number of years, until 2009. GM wanted to take these learnings and said, okay, we were able to successfully do that at NUMMI, let's put that into the rest of our organization. And so they tried that. There was an organization, there was a factory in Van Nuys, California as well. One of the first places they tried to take those learnings and bring it to. When they tried to do that, the local management resisted. They didn't want to change. They didn't want somebody telling them how to do their job, despite knowing that they had quality problems. The unions resisted. The employees were skeptical. Leadership truly didn't embrace the idea that they had to make these changes. They ultimately closed Van Nuys as well. Over the next number of years, GM slowly brought the learnings of NUMMI into GM. Right up until 2009. We all know what happened in 2009. They filed for bankruptcy. It wasn't because they didn't bring in the learnings. There were lots of problems that caused the failure of GM. But it took them a long time to do it. Perhaps if their culture was different, one to accept change, they could have installed those better and faster in the organization and been able to improve the quality. Been able to stop losing market share. They lost market share right up until bankruptcy. It was the culture that did that. When they filed for bankruptcy, of course, they backed out of the partnership with Toyota. And then in 2010, Toyota closed the plant. Let's look at what's going on at that same plant today. There's a company we know, a small car company, Tesla. A significantly different corporate culture, a culture of a startup, one where you have to change. If you don't change and adapt, you don't survive. They had big goals. Their goals to change the automotive industry, go to all electric, produce a car completely autonomously with complete automation. And they tried that. They had a goal of building 100,000 cars by the end of 2017. And if you know anything about Tesla, they missed miserably. But that didn't necessarily stop them. Earlier this year, they realized what it was that they were doing wrong. They had overestimated what they could do with robots and AI and automation, and underestimated the human element in process. The ability for a human to adjust to the process and slight changes. Earlier this year, when they realized that, they didn't try to continue to push the automation, which was part of their core goal. They changed. They ripped out a bunch of automation, installed humans in the process, and now at the end of Q3 this year, they've started to hit their production goals. They built 5,300 cars the last week of the quarter. They're on track now to begin to build 6,000 and 7,000 cars a week. They were able to do this because they had the culture to change and adapt. And that's what we need to have inside of our organizations in order to take us into the future. So what can we do? The culture of an organization is our ultimate quality tool. What we need to do is now look to improve ourselves, improve our roles, improve our organization. Let's talk about a couple of things that we can do. I'm going to start with a 2D print. In manufacturing, this is something that we know and love. It's been around forever. It started off on a drafting table with a piece of paper, a pencil, and a scale. Created a 2D print that looks a lot like that. That one is generated with 3D CAD. They're more or less equivalent. We're not utilizing our tools effectively. The print of today is more or less exactly the print of 50 years ago. I have a friend who runs a mechanical engineering team of about 130 mechanical engineers. It's a significant team. And when I asked her, she and I were talking about how does she use the capabilities of her CAD software? Does she embed GD&T? Do they embed PMI information into the model and share that with their suppliers? No. No, they actually still put GD&T on the print. All the PMI data is on the print. And even when they go out to their suppliers, they supply them a PDF. That's essentially a piece of paper for quoting, even for manufacturing. Just think about the inefficiencies in that cycle. So we create this print that is essentially an embodiment of a piece of paper, and hand it to our suppliers, who then have to estimate it by looking at the print. If they're awarded the business, they have to recreate the CAD so that they can program their machine tools. The inspection planners, they have to look at the print and interpret the GD&T and create inspection programs. All of that can be automated if we simply start using the full capabilities of 3D. Oddly enough, it's not as prevalent as you might think, and the capability has been out there for a while. So start to do that. Start to create connections between the outputs of your quality and the inputs to your manufacturing. Of course, you can do that with softwares. There's technology that exists that can entirely automate that. Take an inspection output and feed that back into a machine tool to adjust the tool path for tooling wear. But you don't have to go that big. Measure your processes. Provide the process information back into the operation so that people can see what's going on with the operation at the time that they're doing it. Try to find out how you have leading metrics of where you're going. Do it with dashboards. That's simple. Measure the process, provide the information. The right information to the right person at the right time. That's where we need to go. Start to look at creation of connections beyond just the manufacturing operation in the factory. Design, manufacturing, quality, service, tech support, sales, all of our tools inside of our operations, inside of our enterprises, you want to connect. And you want to do that because that's how we live our lives today. You want to be able to have the information that's pertinent to you at the time that you can do it. A guy in service is out servicing a machine out in the field, and he wants to understand something about a change that he's not familiar with. Well, provide him the data that comes out of engineering. Allow him to get into the data, see the change order that drove that change. You can imagine that service engineer being able to see the sales cycle. If he knew there was a big job on the line and he had an extra hour of work, rather than come in the next day, maybe he'll put in the extra hour to help close the business for the sales guy. Likewise, the salesperson might be able to change their approach to the conversation, frame the conversation that they're having with their account, if he knows what's going on inside of the service realm. Making the connections between these different pieces of business tools will help us in our enterprise. And once you do all that, try to also make quality, it's part of your brand statement. When you build quality into your process and you build quality product, tell your customers, tell the world. It serves two purposes. One, for the internal organization, that quality is important. and that the processes that they're responsible for support the brand statement. It helps to build that culture. And from the outside, your customers look at it and realize that, know that you're building good product and can identify that with the statements that you make about your brand. Let me share with you a couple of things that we've done that have worked and some things that haven't worked. I've been in engineering for quite a while. I've implemented a number of PLM systems, which is a product lifecycle management system. We've taken the data that was normally controlled in network folders and engineering change orders that are provided on a piece of paper or an Excel file and put them into systems. Those systems then can be integrated with the manufacturing operation. The changes that we make in engineering can flow then into the operation and inform the right people. We've made those connections at both of my companies between ERP and PLM, between your ERP system and your sales system, so that you can integrate orders more effectively, or your service system, making the connection between service and sales. Those things that I talked about a few minutes ago, those are things that we're doing and we're working on and that have actually improved things. Another thing that we successfully have done at Hexagon is unite us. We've created that culture, that corporate culture. We have a vast number of brands, and all those brands are extremely important. They're important to our customers. They're important to our identity. But what we need to do is understand that we all need to work together in order to provide that vision of the connected factory, of the smart factory. We work hard to create Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence, and the core mission that we provide is one that we all support inside of the organization. It wasn't always like that for Hexagon. When I joined 10 years ago, the company that I joined, Hexagon in Rhode Island, was what Brown & Sharp was. The company in Torino, Italy, was DEA, or DIA. The company in Switzerland, TESA. The company in Germany was Lights. And when I joined, I realized that everybody referred to all of these different organizations by their brand name. And while that sounds simple, what that does is undermine the idea that we're all one. We sound like we're in different companies. They just happen to manufacture or design for a different brand. And we want to share those technologies. And so we worked hard, and I worked hard particularly in my organization to say, don't ever refer to a brand again if you're talking about somebody in another part of the company. They're Hexagon. We are Hexagon. And it's worked. Something that didn't work so well was when I worked at Loud Technologies. When I started EAW, we were a pretty small company, about 200 employees. There was only 3 or 4 engineers at the time. And we were really proud of what it is that we manufactured. EAW was a high-end loudspeaker manufacturer. A few years after I joined them, we were bought, and we were bought by Mackie. Mackie is a company that is in the MI business, musical instrument business. And we considered them a bit down market. Not necessarily down market in reality, in a different market, but it was much less expensive product. Mackie then bought RCF, the very company that I went to work for in Italy. And we realized, after acquiring RCF and then a couple other brands, that we had all these brands and they all were owned by Mackie. Well, Mackie was a brand as well. And so what we did was change our name to try and create the idea that that corporate culture, internally, we are all the same. Loud Technologies, Loud Audio. So we tried to do that. Well, it worked in parts of the organization, in other parts it didn't. One of the places it didn't work was at RCF. Shortly after my time there, RCF ended up failing. They struggled with their culture. The idea that corporate in Seattle was kind of controlling them. They didn't trust them. I was sent over there in part to help integrate the engineering teams, but it was the entire organization that had that sense of distrust. And ultimately, that had an impact on what we were able to do with that company. We ended up bankrupting the company and divesting all of our interest in it. Well, what happened was somebody came along days later and bought all the pieces. And they reopened RCF. RCF now started up a new company with a new culture with all of the same people. But they had an idea and a feeling, a culture that it was all inside of their control. And over the years, what they did was make incremental improvements. And they became quite successful. So successful, in fact, that only a couple of months ago, I find out that they bought my company that I started at. So the point is that the culture allowed them to improve. Previously, that didn't exist. Culture is very important. It allows us to change. And if we want to improve, we have to be able to change. So let me leave with you a few things. Start small. Don't try and do everything. As we look at what we want to create in the future, a connected factory, it's easy to say, we can make all these connections. I have all these systems. Let's start to integrate everything. Don't try to eat the elephant in one bite. You eat it one bite at a time. Gain some incremental successes, because success breeds success. When you make an incremental change and improve it and show that success, it helps to further that. Build quality into your process. It's not just a manufacturing tool. It's not just the output of manufacturing and taking a look at what it is that you just made. Quality is in everything that we do in the manufacturing world. It's in everything we do in our business. The quality output of one process directly impacts downstream processes. So every process, be it manufacturing or otherwise, is important. Build quality into that. Improve collaboration with software. Digital transformation, industrial Internet of Things, these big buzzwords. Particularly digital transformation, this is what it speaks to. We talked a little bit about the 2D to 3D and utilizing that capability a bit more. Perhaps it's not even that complicated. Look at what we do with Microsoft Office today. Most people are used to creating an Excel sheet, putting it in an email, zipping it up, sending it over, having somebody else add some information to that Excel file, having them send that back, trying to manage versions. If you're a little bit better, you might actually put it on a network drive, check it in and check it out. You don't have to do that anymore. The tools, even inside of Microsoft Office, allow you to collaborate. Those days are gone. You can actually put an Excel file up and edit it at the same time as somebody else in your company, somebody else across the country. And while you're sitting there editing it, you can see that they're in the file and their changes are showing up on your screen. Use the modern tools of today to improve collaboration. Start with Microsoft Office. Start with something else. There are lots of tools out there to improve that. And make quality part of your brand. That unites your company. When quality is part of your brand and you build quality into your process, your organization can get behind it. And when you put it as part of your brand and you're building quality product, your customers realize that. They reward you with loyalty, and they'll reward you with their business. Remember, to improve is to change. So to be perfect, you've had to change often. Thank you.
We have microphones for any questions. Any questions from anybody? Just record these. Well, Zach, I do have a question. Good presentation. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
My question is, I once worked for an organization that had a cultural issue. What they did was they went out and started a whole other division, a new facility. They did a lot of benchmarking and able to bring the best cultural information and practices from many different organizations to that startup. It was very successful. I'm now with an organization that's been around for over 110 years, and we're going through a cultural change.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more difficult when you have an embedded history.
Yeah.
So what specifically are you doing at Hexagon to change and have everybody adapt to your changing culture to improve? Some specifics.
So culturally, it's something that happens both from the top and from the bottom. So from the top, from a leadership perspective, you have to communicate that to the organization, and you have to drive that into the organization, believing it yourself. At the same time, you want to actually have people inside of the organization, kind of champions for change, champions to improve the quality, to improve that culture, to change the culture. You need to identify champions inside of the organization, people in positions of trust, to be able to put that into the organization. We're working through a digital transformation, as many companies are. And what you do is you identify ambassadors of that digital transformation, who are part of the organization, that work inside of the organization to bring the message and demonstrate some of the successes. And so really, it's belief at the top that you need to make that cultural change and support from leadership. And it's identifying people inside of the organization that have the ability to change and then believe in making that change, and using that team to push it into the organization.
Thank you. Follow-up question. There's an old adage, what gets measured gets done. Is there a way that you guys measure culture and able to see it's moving direction where it's being adapted? I know it's a tough thing to do. So if it is, how would you do that? How do you know you're making improvements culturally?
We don't measure it. I think it's measured not objectively, but subjectively on how people perceive the organization and what you see inside of the organization, collaboration between teams. The collaboration piece is something that we do pay attention to. How well are teams working together? And if they're not, why aren't they working together, and what can we do to improve it? So while we don't necessarily measure it, we monitor it. And we monitor it a bit subjectively, but if we see an issue, we'll address it.
Thank you.
Outstanding presentation.
Thank you.
I have a question. I've done a lot of things in quality. Right now I'm working with the university, and I'm teaching metrology. I'm teaching the metrology lab and trying to be inspired by what you presented today. What do you think I can do to improve the throughput of the homework assignments into more of a collaborative? And I'm working with junior and senior engineering students.
Yeah.
And I really think there's something that can be done with this new technology that
Sure.
we're underutilizing. Do you have any insight?
Well, depending on the technology, of course, would be to try and figure out what technology you have and you're using with your students, and making sure that they're exploring all of the capabilities. One of the things that I notice as we bring in new engineers into our organization is that some of the recent college graduates explore areas with our tools and find new ways to do things that some of our existing employees don't. And allowing them to be able to try to figure out how you might connect these pieces together and use these different technologies and challenge them. They are naturally curious in college and straight out of school, where oftentimes that curiosity and that drive for change, drive for investigation, wanting to understand the unknown, sometimes that disappears. While they're in college, I would encourage it and ask them simply to explore the tools that you have. If you have a specific ways, look at tools that would allow you to connect inputs and outputs. A lot of that stuff can be done with Python scripts and that sort of thing, with being able to take simple data and move it around. Yeah, I would do something like that to allow them to explore it a bit.
Follow up on that. Yesterday we heard, talking to the exhibitors at your booth here, that you have a university, Hexagon University.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what efforts you're making with colleges and upcoming engineers?
So we partner with a few different universities, both universities that are specific in metrology, as well as universities that are close to us, and specifically University of Rhode Island, where we naturally draw some talent from. Hexagon U is a piece of our organization where we offer training classes and different trainings, both for internal in the organization, but also for our customers. Things about inspection, some basics in GD&T. Also, there's trainings in there about specifically about our products. So Hexagon U is specifically around training. It's kind of our training module, our learning management module. And then as it relates to working with universities, we partner with a number of universities and put product there and work with the students, as well as working with students in terms of bringing talent into our organization.
Thank you.
Hey, good morning. Mark Pickert. I'm curious, it looks like you do a lot of great work with Hexagon internally in terms of understanding the culture and promoting change. In today's environment where your supply chain is so much of the business, can you talk a little bit about sharing your vision, as you know, from a Hexagon perspective with your suppliers to make sure they get it?
Sure. So as you think about a connected factory, it is beyond the factory, as you point out. It goes into the supply chain, because the quality of the products that come into your factory, if you're not manufacturing, perhaps it's assembly. So the quality of the products that come into your factory is important. Being able to connect your suppliers, the output of your suppliers' reports, inspection reports on your supplier side into your ERP system so that you can track those materials through your system, is something that can be done. PLM systems, and while we haven't implemented it, but it's certainly capable, have supplier modules where if a supplier is qualified for manufacturing a part, the changes that you make in the PLM system are automatically communicated to that supplier. So there are lots of ways that you can make those connections with those business tools, both inside of the company, but outside of the company into the supply chain. And in doing so, it streamlines your supply chain and makes the quality of the supply chain better.
As a director of R&D, is there anything you're working on currently that would be a real wow, something radical that's coming?
If I told you, I'd have to kill you. I mean, really the vision of what we're working on, some of the things that we're working on, support the vision of what we talk about in terms of the connected factory, the industrial Internet of Things. So connecting assets together and making sure that you can remotely monitor assets, understand the usage patterns of them, understand the operating efficiency of those assets in your organization. What we call smart factory are things that we're working on, not out there yet, but we're starting to talk about them so that you can begin to put your arms around that entire factory and that entire connected factory.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do want to present Zach a plaque, whoops, on behalf of the Inspection Division. It simply says to Zach, in grateful appreciation for an outstanding keynote address at the 2008 ASQ Inspection Division Conference. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And you did a great job. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we are on break. Please visit the exhibit booths. The food's still available, and we will resume at 10:15. Track A will be in this room, and then Track B will be directly upstairs in Amphitheater 219. Hopefully you all found your programs. Everything is on the inside cover, your schedule, and the back page has the map layout of the facility. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your conference.